Morning, kids! This week I want to give us all a bit of hope because the news recently has been really painful to listen to. It's just been an endless stream of stories about how people are suffering and how it's only going to get worse. But this isn't 2016. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Because back then, the Brexit Tories or Brexiteries were claiming to offer people hope that things could get better. And because the options in that referendum were leave the EU or keep things as they are, Remainers and lefties were forced to defend the status quo and tell horror stories about how bad things could get if you listen to the Tories. But right now, it's the Brexiteers who are telling you that this is the best they can do for you and you just need to brace yourself for things to get worse. And who is it who actually has a plan to make things better for the millions of people across the country who are really struggling right now? Oh yeah! It's us. So much of what the Brexiteers promised people in 2016 are what the progressive majority are actually offering people now. For starters, at its most basic level, Brexit was supposed to be this movement of the people where we take back power from the political elite. Well, on one side of UK politics, you have a Tory leadership race where Tory members, who represent 0.2% of UK voters and who are mainly middle-class men, will decide our next Prime Minister by making a choice between two Tory MPs who were hand-selected by, well, Tory MPs. A popularity contest between two millionaire MPs judged by wealthy Conservative members is hardly a people's revolution. On the other side, the opposition parties, the Lib Dems, the Greens, the SNP, Plaid Cymru, all have manifesto policies to give people a voting system where everybody's vote counts equally. Because Johnson and co were smart to use the slogan, "Take back control," people feel powerless. Millions of people live in constituencies where either their party always wins comfortably so their vote is meaningless, or their party always loses heavily, so their vote is meaningless. Under our current system, if 30% of a constituency vote Labour, 30% vote Green, and 40% vote Tory, the right-wing Tory will become the MP of that constituency, even though we can all agree that 60% of those voters would have wanted policies that are far more left-wing than the MP that supposedly represents them. Why is that? Because under this system, all that matters is who comes first between the politicians, as if it's some sort of game between them all. It doesn't matter whether the MP who wins actually reflects the views of the people in his constituency, because as you know, the Tories got a minority of the votes but still ended up with a majority of the seats in Parliament, which means that their votes actually counted 18 times more than Green votes. So think about the fact that the UK recorded its highest temperature ever this summer. The train tracks caught fire. The train tracks caught fire! So again I ask you, how can you tackle a climate emergency if Tory votes count 18 times more than Green votes? So many young people are desperate to get involved in politics, but they want to know that their votes will count. PR will give that to them. And racism, as well as sexism and classism, can all be addressed better if our system no longer gives absolute power to a party who the United Nations says is seeking to normalize white supremacy. As we know, having an ethnic minority name can cut your chances of being called back by a potential employer by half. But we can address that. We can use tax incentives or simply mandate that employers use anonymous job application processes where they don't say the name, sex, hometown, or school of the applicant, and deliver a huge blow to gender, race, class, and regional inequality immediately. And we, the progressive majority, would get that done under a fair voting system. The Tories constantly say they're going to bring the country back together after they tore it apart via Brexit. But one of the reasons why UK politics is so aggressive is because under the first past the post voting system, in any given constituency, only one MP can win. Which means that every other party, even if you agree on almost everything, is an existential threat to you. It's kill or be killed. Whereas under a proportional system, you'd have multiple MPs elected and the seats shared proportionally based on the percentage of your area that voted for each party. In fact, MPs of different parties could actually use the elections to highlight their ability to work with each other on things they share in common because they'll have to in Parliament. So we'll be a less politically confrontational country when we get PR. And that we is ordinary people. Brexit was supposed to be this anti-establishment movement of the people. But in reality, it simply handed absolute power to a millionaire former London mayor, giving him a blank check to decide our relationship with Europe, how we would handle COVID, and the cost of living crisis. But who is it that's calling for a fair voting system? It's not the party in government, they're very happy with things as they are. It's not even the leader of the Labour Party because he's been absent from the debate, even though 80% of Labour members want a fair voting system. It's the people who want this. We're the ones who are going to have to drag Keir Starmer kicking and screaming towards democracy, not the politicians. Because those are the people who want a fair voting system, and those are the people who either don't or don't know. And changing the voting system also helps with the cost of living. The Tories will tell you they're doing all they can and they can't afford to help you anymore. Which is a bit rich given that they wasted billions of our money giving COVID contracts to their mates. But the money is there to make this better. We're talking about people who'll be going cold this winter because they're too scared to turn the heating on. We're talking about the 1 in 4 Brits who've been skipping meals to keep their kids fed. But we're not talking about the whole country. As of 2018, the bottom fifth of UK households had 13 grand of disposable income, but the top fifth had 69 grand. And the richest 1% takes in 13% of the national income. In fact, we're the fourth most financially unequal country in Europe, and since the pandemic, it's only gotten worse. And you can literally see that there's room for improvement, because while our rich are much richer than, say, France or Germany, our poor are much poorer. Now, are we the country that thinks that some people deserve to shiver throughout the winter with their hungry kids, while others deserve more money than they can reasonably spend? No. As a country, 65% of us want to tax the rich more to pull people out of poverty. Because we know that the construction worker, the nurse, the unpaid carer, or the single parent who can only work part-time work just as hard as the CEO, the corporate lawyer, or the banker. So if all votes counted equally, we would be a more equal society. Unlike the rest of the country who want the government to share out the wealth so that we can tackle poverty properly, 63% of Tory members do not want that. And that's who Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are really working for right now. And Liz Truss, who's most likely to win, was recorded saying that if Brits want to get out of poverty, they just need to work harder.
There's a fundamental issue in British working culture. What needs to happen is, more graft.
Effectively saying that poor people are just lazy. Again, they're not the hope, we are. And I'm not saying that tackling poverty is just about pulling those two numbers together. The biggest driver behind the Brexit vote was regional inequality. The fact that the best jobs in transport are concentrated around London and the southeast. In fact, the gap between the rich and poor areas of the UK is worse than anywhere else in the economically advanced world. And under the Tories, it's only gotten worse. So again, room for improvement. Now, because since 2016, everybody and their dog knows that promising to fix regional inequality is key to getting votes, it's become a bit of a political football. So let me lay this out for you in a way that nobody can even argue against. The Tories do not want to fix regional inequality. Here's what the last Tory PM said about it.
Is that a pound spent in Croydon is far more value to the country from strict utilitarian calculus than a pound spent in Strathclyde.
Here's what the likely runner-up to be our next Tory PM said about it.
Because we inherited a bunch of formulas from the Labour Party that shoved all the funding into deprived urban areas, then that needed to be undone. I started the work of undoing that.
And Liz Truss, who's most likely to be our next Tory PM, tried to introduce a policy to pay civil servants less if they live outside of London. That means that all three of the closest Tories to Downing Street right now have explicitly said that they want to make the poorest areas of the UK even poorer. You've got to remember that it's not in the Tories' interest to fix these problems. Think about it. If everybody was financially comfortable, then the narrative of you're struggling because of these immigrants and minorities wouldn't work. They thrive off people's pain. Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, they've always voted to cut people's benefits, and yet now they're painting themselves as the answer to the problem they caused. Gee, kind of like cutting 21,000 police so that crime gets out of hand, and they're winning an election on a promise to bring in 20,000 police. And Jacob Rees-Mogg is reported to be Liz Truss's top pick for levelling up secretary. Oh, if you're not sure who Jacob Rees-Mogg is, imagine if, like, the gentleman from Buffy and the Monopoly man fucked. Just a mix of classism, cruelty, and capitalism. We need to take power out of their hands because right now, UK politics is just a game between politicians where all that matters is who comes first between them. Because as the Kenyan saying goes, when elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. We shouldn't have to sit here waiting to see which millionaire hurts us more. As a great man once said,
people should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
We need a system where every vote counts equally so that politicians know that they have to fight for every vote in every part of the country or they will lose power. Because once we achieve democratic equality, we can get real equality, and fewer people will fear the cold. As for Brexit, it's obvious. Every poll and election since 2016 says the majority of people want to be inside the EU single market. Because food farming and fishing are being crushed by the delays at the border, the removal of EU funding, and the shortage of workers. We'd fix that. Small businesses are being crushed by Brexit red tape when they're trying to sell to the EU. We'd fix that. Jacob Rees-Mogg says that the Brexit checks on imports at the end of next year will add 70% to the cost of food. We'd undo the hell out of that. There have been many reasons to feel utterly depressed by the state of the UK, to the point of almost wanting to give up. But A, giving up is harder because if we don't get the Tories out, we're stuck living under Slytherin's alumni for the rest of our lives. And B, the path to that better future is simple. Opposition parties work together at the next election on the basis of delivering fair voting in all future elections. And that will happen at some point. Martin Luther King once said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And we are a country where the majority of people consistently vote for parties that are more left-wing than the ruling party and has done for the last 80 years. And with the majority of people in favour of fair voting and undoing the damage of Brexit, and a TikTok generation that is ready to burn this place to the ground if we don't get it done soon, the future's bright. The future's anything but fucking blue. Have a great week.